Gentlemen, what is going on today? My name is Ryan Mickler, and I am the host and the founder of this podcast and the movement that is Order of Man. Whether you've been with us for any amount of time or just joining us for the very first podcast today, I want to welcome you to the best podcast and the best source of information available for men who are trying to improve their lives in every capacity, whether it's your role as a husband, a father, a business owner, community leader. Again, whatever facet of life you're showing up, I want to give you the tools, the conversation, the guidance, the resources, and of course, the direction to help you be more capable. And that's exactly what we're doing here in this podcast. This is your Friday Field Notes. So this is some thoughts and ideas and just things bouncing around in my brain, ideas that I've had from throughout the week with regards to what it means to be a man. And I get a lot of questions about how to develop more confidence. So that's what I thought I'd talk with you about today, how to do that. And I've got a 4-step process for doing that has seemed to work well in my life. I want to share that with you as well because there seems to be a lot of confusion about where confidence stems from. So we're going to address that here in a minute. Before I get into that conversation, I just want to make a mention of my friends over at Origin. You guys are familiar with them. They do rash guards, gis, jiu-jitsu apparel and training gear, but they also have their supplemental lineup partnered up with Jocko. That's their joint warfare, their super krill, their discipline go, their mulk, and then also the discipline energy and cognitive enhancing drink that they just came online with. So check it all out. I use personally the super krill, the joint warfare for the joints, the fingers, the elbows, the knees as I continue down this jiu-jitsu path. The mulk, the pre-workout. I use pretty much everything over there, and I was a big skeptic of supplements in the past, but the more that I utilize these supplements, 100% made in America, the better off I feel, and the better I recover, and the better my training seems to go. So check it out. Origin Maine, as in the state Maine, originmaine.com, and then use the code ORDER, ORDER, at checkout, and you'll get a discount on anything you purchase over there. All right, guys, so let's get into the meat of the discussion today. I want to talk with you about confidence. This seems to be a reoccurring trend, a reoccurring question. A lot of guys ask me where confidence comes from, how to develop confidence, and I thought I'd share with you a framework. That's all it is, a framework for developing more confidence in your life. Now, the reason confidence is so important is because it's going to help you be more productive. Bottom line, if you're more confident in who you are and how you show up as a man, whether, again, it's a father, a husband, business owner, community leader, you are going to have better results. People are going to listen to you. They're going to respond and react in a positive manner to you because you are a bold, assertive, confident leader. And that's exactly who you want to be. And I'm going to share with you exactly how to create that. I learned a lot of this as I was developing my own financial planning practice. I started doing financial planning in 2006 when I got back from Iraq. And I remember going into prospects, clients, meetings, and really struggling with my level of confidence. And I feel like because I struggled with confidence, that came across in my sales presentation. And ultimately, I wasn't as high converting with potential prospects had I could have been if I had the level of confidence that I began to develop over time using the framework that I'm going to share with you today. But what's interesting about this, and this is a little bit of a catch-22 because you actually need to go through a process in order to develop confidence. So a lot of people will say things like, well, you just fake it till you make it. And maybe there's some merit to some of that, but if you're faking everything, that's not really confidence. It's not genuine, and people are going to see through that. Your potential clients, you listening to this podcast or watching this video, your kids, your wife, the people you're trying to lead are going to see that you're faking it, and they're not going to be led by you. Now, you may have some sort of authority, for example, with your kids or subordinates, employees, etc., where they're in a way obligated to do those things, but leadership is about getting people to voluntarily follow you to a place they could not have imagined going on their own. And in order to do that, you need to exude this level of confidence. We all know the guy who, he walks into a room and immediately you recognize something about this individual, that there's something special or unique, and most of us have heard it referred to as the XFactor. That's confidence. The X factor is confidence, but it's earned. And that is the most important thing you need to know. There is a misconception out there that the guys who are confident are just inherently confident, that they were born confident, that they are bestowed some magical gift or blessing upon birth that some of us just don't have. And if only that had changed, then you would be more confident. That's not true at all. There's a difference between arrogance, excessive pride, ego, and then actually being confident. So I will say that there are some who are arrogant, who have excessive pride, who are driven by ego, and that's not confidence. That's not earned. That's the difference. It's not earned. It's just manufactured. It's just conjured up in their mind. Confidence, on the other hand, is earned. And you know very, very quickly somebody who's BSing you and somebody who has actually developed a real sense of confidence through the process and the framework that I'm going to share with you today. So let's just jump right into this one. It's a 4-step loop. And I call it a loop because when you insert yourself into the loop, and there is a place that you need to start, and I'm going to share that with you here in a minute. But when you go through this process and you get to the last step, it actually helps you with that first step. And I'm going to explain this. You're going to understand this as I go through it. But guys, I want you to work this process because I have worked it in my financial planning practice. I've worked it in my relationships with my wife and my children. I've worked this into my role here with podcasting and doing video on YouTube, which you might be able to tell I'm still a little uncomfortable on the video thing for YouTube because I'm just getting started. And that's actually going to tie nicely into what I'm going to say. So step number 1 is this. It's not confidence. Step number 1 in this confidence loop is courage. Guys, you have to exhibit some level of courage in order to build more confidence in your life. You are not going to be good at something that you are trying for the very first time. And it seems to me that so many guys will not go out and try new things because they're worried about looking foolish. I understand it. I get it. We don't want to look foolish. We don't want to look like morons. Chances are when you were a kid, you may have got made fun of by your father or father figure or a brother or friends for doing something stupid or looking foolish or not knowing some bit of information that you never would have known had you not asked for it or immersed yourself into that world. So we're drawing upon all this past experience, and the past experience says, don't take risks. Don't take risks. Because when you do, you potentially ostracize yourself from the group. You're going to be ridiculed. You're going to be mocked. You know, I'm looking here on YouTube and the podcast and social media. I mean, I hear from people every day who mock and ridicule and put down and belittle everything about everything that we're doing. And if I didn't develop and display some level of courage towards moving towards something that is motivating to me, something that's calling to me, a purpose and a sense of direction, I would never put myself into this arena. I would never get this information out into the world because I'm so consumed with what other people think of me and them mocking me and ultimately the fear of rejection. Think about it this way. If you had something that you wanted to pursue, whether it was a podcast or getting into jiu-jitsu or picking up archery or any other hobby that potentially you're interested in, if you knew that there was going to be nobody there to mock you or ridicule you or put you down as you were getting started on that journey, would you do it? The answer is, of course, yes, you would do it. So what's keeping you from doing it? It's the fear that other people will reject you. It's the fear that other people are going to think less of you for doing that thing and for failing. Guys, courage is an attribute and a virtue and a trait that all of us possess to some degree, and it's a conscious decision. Displaying courage is a conscious decision, and through the process that I'm going to work you through with the next 3 steps, you're going to see that confidence isn't necessarily a decision, it's the result of decisions. So the first choice that you need to make is you need to be bold. And you need to exhibit some level of courage. You need to risk looking a little bit foolish. You need to risk being the amateur, being the novice as you get started down a brand new venture. How do you do that? You make the decision. That's it. You simply make a decision that you want to be bold, that you want to be courageous, that you want to move towards some endeavor. And yes, you're going to get mocked. Yes, you're going to be ridiculed. Yes, people are going to put it down. Yes, it's going to be difficult. Yes, you might actually fail, but you're never going to develop confidence unless you're willing to do that. So step number one, again, is exhibiting some level of courage towards a thing. I'm going to challenge you that if there's something that you felt like you want to get started with, like an activity or a hobby or a project or an endeavor or a business or whatever it might be, asking a woman on a date, that you just exhibit some level of courage right now, today, and you move the needle. I'm not asking you to win. I'm not asking you to complete your ultimate objective. I'm just asking you and challenging you to move the needle in the right direction by exhibiting courage and taking the very first step towards whatever that endeavor is for you. So step number one, again, is courage. Step number two is consistency. When I got into the podcasting world in March of 2015, there were at least 24 other organizations that were starting or had already started something very similar to what we wanted to create here with Order of Man. And now looking at it, new ones are popping up every day. New ones are some of these older ones are going away, but the most of them, the majority of the organizations that are similar to what we're doing here that started around the same time I did are no longer around. They're no longer around. Yes, they exhibited step number one, courage, because they took the first step, but what they failed to do is they failed to do it consistently. It's easy to be good for a minute. It's easy to be good for a day. It's easy to stay on track with a diet for a week, a month, and maybe even potentially a year. But can you do it for sustainable, long periods of time, like 12 months, 24 months, 5 years, 10 years, the rest of your life? Gentlemen, if you want to develop a level of confidence in who you are and how you're showing up in a hobby or the way that you're presenting yourself or a skill set that you're trying to develop, then consistency is the name of the game. It's not enough to be well and do it well once. You have to be willing to and make the commitment to being consistent towards developing that skill set forever, indefinitely. So if you're going to start, and again, I go back to jiu-jitsu, for example, if you're going to start jiu-jitsu, or you're going to start archery, or you're going to start writing, and you want to write a book, or you're going to start a podcast, or you're going to do whatever it is you're going to do, then make the decision, plant the flag right now that you're not doing this based on maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. You're making a lifetime commitment at this point to pursue that course of action. When I started the podcast again in March of 2015, I made the decision that I would not even evaluate whether or not I was going to continue down this path or throw in the towel for at least 2 years. At least 2 years before I would even evaluate whether or not I was going to stop podcasting. That's the level of commitment that it requires. And so I'll have guys who will say, you know, Ryan, I started podcasting and I did, like 10 or 20 episodes and realized I wasn't very good at it and that it wasn't for me. 20 episodes, man, you're not even in the game yet. You're not in the game unless you're podcasting for a year or 18 months or even 2 years. And at that point, you're actually in the game. So don't tell me that you did it well for 2 months and it just didn't work out and it wasn't meant for you. No, maintain a level of consistency required in order to build the confidence that you're after. And ultimately, the reason we want confidence is to produce the desired result. Because confidence in and of itself is pointless. It's meaningless. It's that the fact that having more confidence will help you produce a desired result in your life. So have the courage, be bold, be willing to start, but plant the flag knowing that you have to do this for a very, very long time. Too many men get into projects with a unhealthy and a false set of expectations about what it's going to take. They underestimate the amount of time and effort it's going to take in order to gain some level of mastery, and they overestimate their own abilities and how well they'll do starting a new endeavor. I do this all the time, and what I've realized is that I'm not as good as I think I am, and it's going to take twice as long and twice as much money and effort and other resources to get myself into some pursuit. So be realistic about the expectations. Hire coaches. Look at what other people have done that are producing the results that you're after. talk with them, communicate with them, figure out what they've done, what's worked, what hasn't, because you need to ensure that you have the right set of expectations so that you can plant the flag and you can do this thing, whatever this thing is, consistently and indefinitely. So that's point number 2. Point number 3, and I keep looking down here, guys, if you're watching on video, because I've just got my notepads here, or my notepad here, rather. I use field notes. I've got these everywhere, and that way I can just take some notes and make sure I cover all the important topics that I want to cover, and we get it all addressed in a way that I meant to. Otherwise, I kind of tend to get off subject a little bit, like I am now. Okay, so we've got number 1 is courage. Number 2 is consistency. Number 3 is then this inevitably leads to some level of competence. When you're courageous and you're bold and you take a step into the unknown and you pursue something that is meaningful, that is significant, that you're after and you want, and then you display a level of consistency required to begin to master something, you develop competence. And competence, again, just like confidence, is earned. It's the result of the courage. It's the result of the consistency. I think of The Matrix, for example, where Keanu Reeves is like plugged in and he's getting the training, and it's a video and he's watching it or it's being plugged into his brain, and he wakes up and he's like, I know Kung Fu. I mean, wouldn't it be nice if we could just download that information into our brain and instantaneously we'd have the competence required to be successful at a thing? Unfortunately, and fortunately, it doesn't work like that. You need to put in the time. You need to put in the effort. You need to fail. You need to succeed. You need to learn. My friend Pete Roberts with Origin calls it tuition payments. You have to pay the tuition payments. And the tuition payments aren't necessarily financial, although they could be, because I've made some financial missteps. I've got one of our new shirts on, in fact, and that reminds me that when we were just launching the Order of Man merchandise store, because guys were asking about hats and shirts and other things that we could offer, I had made a shirt that was strikingly similar to another organization's shirt. And I didn't quite realize it at the time. And so we launched this shirt, and this other organization reached out, and rightfully, looking back, they were pissed about that. They were upset about that. And out of respect and looking back on it, I was like, yeah, it's really close. I decided to discontinue those shirts. I think we sold 8 of them, 5 of them. I don't know how many we sold in between the time that we released them and the time I was contacted by this company, and they asked us to stop selling these shirts. So I ended up having, if I remember correctly, somewhere around 150 extra shirts lying around that I couldn't sell. That represented time, that represented money, that represented effort on my part. It could have been invested somewhere else that I would have been able to capitalize on those shirts, but that was a tuition payment. Now, it wasn't overly expensive, but if you start to compound those over and over and over again, you learning and gaining confidence is going to cost some capital, financial, time, attention, focus, potentially even relationships. It's going to cost for you to develop the level of competence that you're trying to develop towards your craft. Same thing with podcast equipment. I've bought a ton of equipment, thousands and thousands of dollars worth of equipment that I've never used, or I used once and realized it was the wrong thing. I could have maybe done a little better in the research development, but again, I don't get down on those things because I realize that the tuition payments are required in order for me to develop competence. Again, this is a cycle. This is a loop, if you will. So we've got courage is step number 1. You can exhibit some level of courage. That's a decision. That's a choice that every one of us can make. Now, some people say, well, some people are more courageous than others, only because they've chosen to be. That's it. They've made conscious choices to step into fear and doubt and uncertainty because the thing they're pursuing is more valuable or a greater draw than the potential downside of loss or ridicule or failure. So step number 1, courage. Now, once you develop that courage, it's all about consistency. It's not enough to be good for a day. It's not enough to be good for a week or a month or a year. You have to be good indefinitely. And you're going to mess up and you're going to fail along the way. Trust me, Your failure on the path to whatever endeavor you're pursuing does not mean that it's not meant to be. One of my pet peeves that I hear a lot of guys say is if things don't work exactly right, they'll say things like, well, I guess it's not God's will. What a ridiculous statement to make. It has nothing to do with that at all. That would be like saying if my son wanted to start football, for example, or hockey or some other sport or activity, and he tried it the first time and he failed at it, that would be like him saying, well, I guess my dad doesn't really care if I succeed and he doesn't want me to win. It has nothing to do with that at all. Okay, it's you. It's you. All right, you have an opportunity to thrive. You have an opportunity to succeed. And when you fail or things are hard or harder than you thought they would be, it doesn't mean you throw in the towel. It doesn't mean that wasn't meant to be. It just means you paid a tuition payment. It just means you messed up. It just means that you learned a way not to do it, and now you know what to do, hopefully, or at least you know what not to do moving forward, and you can try something a little bit differently. So develop that consistency. The courage plus the consistency now leads to competence. You become a master. You become somebody who understands how to get things done. I get a lot of messages from people who will say things like, hey, Ryan, your podcast is great. Man, you're a great interviewer. You're so natural when you're talking with people. Or they'll say things like, oh, man, you have this great gift, like this born talent. Guys, it was the furthest thing from that. I still am in a lot of ways, but I was so awkward and so uncomfortable talking with people, asking them questions, especially the hard questions. The only reason that somebody would say I'm fairly decent at it is because I've done it for a very, very long time. I've done over, 500 podcasts now. So if I haven't got better at it, something's wrong. So while I appreciate the compliment that people say, you have a gift or you have a skill for this, that's not the case at all. It just means that I developed it over a long and sustained period of time. In fact, probably longer than it would take most people, but I was willing to put the time in. The reason that I'm confident with our ability to podcast, the reason I'm confident with being able to talk with you, the reason I can just take, for example, on my notepad here, the reason I can just take a few notes and just riff on this subject is because I have the competence. I've been talking about this stuff for almost 5 years now. So yeah, I should be able to do this without having it all scripted out line by line and reading it verbatim to you. I've developed a set of competence. And because I've developed this competence towards podcasting, towards doing YouTube, towards interviewing people, towards sending emails out, towards posting on social media, because I've developed the competence, we move into the fourth step and the final step, which is you having a level of confidence, you beginning to develop the X factor. Guys, it's not confusing. The X factor or this confidence factor isn't some mystical attribute that other people aren't able to access. Like there's nothing secretive about this. When you see a man who has the X factor and you think to yourself, man, I want to be like that guy. I want to be that confident. I want to be that assertive. I want to be that bold. I want to be that competent. I want to be a master. He hasn't figured something out that isn't available to everybody else. And nothing I'm sharing with you is even frankly new. Hopefully I'm just giving you a new way to look at it. But the reality is that individual who has the quote unquote X factor that everybody likes to say is some mystical attribute is just him going through the confidence loop. That's all it is. That individual had some courage towards a thing. He exhibited courage as he stepped into the unknown and the uncertainty. He did it for a long and sustained period of time. And because he did, he naturally and inevitably built up some level of competence. And now that competence is showing. That's all it is. It's the manifestation of the first three steps. And as I started this with talking about my financial planning practice, when my financial planning practice began to take off, it's when I realized and stepped fully into this confidence loop. When I developed the competence required to earn the level of confidence that I was after, I didn't have to convince clients. I didn't feel awkward and uncomfortable. I was willing to walk away from potential client interactions because I wanted those people as clients, but I wasn't desperate. I didn't need that. in order for me to live the kind of life that I wanted to live, in order for me to have the kind of financial practice that I wanted to have. And as that confidence exuded from every fiber of my being, my potential customers and clients picked up on that. They read that. They saw it. They felt it. There was the X factor. And overwhelmingly, I saw my numbers of conversions continue to go up and up and up and up. Now, your conversions could be in your business. Your conversions could be you asking women on dates. The conversions could be your kids doing what you'd like them to do. Maybe it's their chores. The conversions could be that your wife doesn't question your, I won't say authority, but she doesn't question your decisions as much because she knows that the level of confidence you have has some power behind it, some depth, some substance behind it, because you've got the courage, the consistency, and the competency to back up that confidence that you're displaying. Now, the reason it's a loop, so I give you the 4 steps. Again, courage, consistency, competence, confidence. Now, the reason it's a loop is because when you get to that 4th step, which is confidence, right now you're a confident individual, guess what that level of confidence does for you? It allows you to develop and display and utilize more courage, because you know that this is a framework that works. This is the equation that works, right? So now you're confident, and because you're confident, you can go out and you can take a bigger risk. You can go out and be bolder and be more assertive and invest more money and time and energy into the projects that are meaningful to you because you know the process. You know the steps. You've eliminated a lot of the uncertainty and a lot of the unknown because you've actually been through this process. Guys, you can't skip steps here. You can't fake your way into confidence. You have to use the confidence loop. And when you step into this thing and you start working it, it's perpetual. It just continues and continues and continues and continues. This is the same concept why we hear when people say, well, the rich just keep getting richer. Right. Because they've learned the skill sets needed in order to build wealth. Some guys get all the ladies, right, because they've developed the skill sets needed in order to be attractive to women. It's the Pareto principle, the 80-20 principle. You guys have probably heard of it, that 80% of the result is created by 20% of the effort, right? Or put another way, is you could say that 80% of the results from men come from actually 20% of the men. Or you could say that 20% of the people in the world own 80% of the wealth. Now, those numbers might be off a little bit depending on what metric we're talking about, but the principle is still the same. So when you hear somebody say, oh, the rich get richer, some guys get all the luck, some guys get all the ladies, or even podcasting, like there's a handful of podcasts that do very, very well, but 80% of them don't. Okay, that's this confidence loop at work. And I wanted to break this down. I wanted to demystify the process of confidence for you so you don't walk around wondering why some guys seem to have all of the luck or all of the gifts and all of the blessings and all of the reward that you're after yourself. If you want those things, whether it's a podcast or a business or a relationship or a team that follows your instruction or kids who respect you or a wife who will follow your lead, then you've got to tap into the confidence loop. Again, as we wind things down today, it's courage, step number 1. Anybody can exhibit that. Step number 2 is developing a level of consistency in displaying that courage towards your worthy pursuit and objective. Step number 3 is you now develop some level of competence because you're doing this. And step number 4 is the confidence comes behind the first 3 steps, and then that confidence is what allows you to come back and display even more courage than you did initially, which will inevitably create more confidence for you. So it's not complicated. I spent almost 30 minutes going through it, and everybody now has a grasp on it. It's simple. Not always easy. Take some time. Take some effort. We already talked about that. You got to pay the tuition. You got to pay the man, right? But if you implement this and you have this at heart and this on your mind as you're trying new things, you're going to develop more confidence. And then ultimately, again, it's not about the confidence itself. It's about the fact that you are going to win. You're going to make more money. You're going to have a deeper connection with your wife and kids. Your team is going to thrive. You're going to get the promotions. You're going to get in shape and live a longer and healthier and more fulfilled life. You're going to have intimate relationships, or at least more opportunities for intimate relationships with members of the opposite sex. It's going to be better. And I want you to be more confident. And in order to be more confident, you have to be courageous. You have to be consistent. You have to develop some level of competency, and you will have that confidence. All right, guys, we're going to wrap things up there today. I hope that helps. Please let me know. Connect with me on Instagram or Facebook, also on YouTube. Our YouTube channel is blowing up. I think over the past, I want to say roughly 2 weeks, we've had over 7,000, maybe even close to 8,000 now, new subscribers. We've got some great videos, including the video for this podcast and some other videos. We're going to start doing some skill set videos over there as well. Pete Roberts is going to be joining me to talk about jiu-jitsu. I'm going to try to get some archery experts involved, some mechanics involved, so we can start learning some of the skill sets that we needed to, the hard skills and the soft skills, to thrive and be more capable as men. So check it out on YouTube, youtube.com/orderofman. Join us over there, and make sure you stay connected. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast. Leave a rating and review. It goes a long way in promoting the visibility and, of course, the message of reclaiming and restoring masculinity. All right, guys, we'll let you get going for the weekend. Hope you enjoy it. We'll catch you next week. Until then, go out there, take action, become the man you are meant to be.